Tanaka, you're watching Talk Business, and to all our viewers who are joining us from around the region via Sky Pacific, a big bull of Inaka to you too. Now on the show tonight, we continue our coverage on the CPA Congress recently held in Nandi. We take a look this week at how accountants can become good leaders and the role they play in helping build an organization. We also draw inspiration from sports and translate lessons learned on leadership on and off the field with none other than sporting legend Petero Civoniceva. They often say leadership is something that must be learned. You can't inherit the skill, nor can you read a book and become a leader. It must simply be learned. So what is leadership? Well, its very definition is hard to explain as it continues to evolve. Trying to describe leadership is like having several viewers trying to compare what they see in a kaleidoscope when the mere act of passing the kaleidoscope shakes up the entire design. Leaders are simply those who influence a group of people towards the achievement of a goal. In a corporate organization, that role is often left to the head of the organization. But accountants, too, play a pivotal role in leadership. How can number crunchers become good leaders? Well, Rick Wilmot believes many accountants are actually great leaders in other areas of their lives, but fail to become successful leaders in business. And there's a very simple reason behind his analysis. As one of the speakers at the CPA Congress recently held in Nandi, he argues ultimately accountants are too focused on the details to be fun or dynamic, and that holds them back from becoming good leaders.
We need to understand our cognitive biases. So we go through life, and our education process tends to teach us that you get given a problem and you have to try and find the right answer, and you get the answer and you either get a tick for yes or a cross for no. The reality is that business isn't like that. Life isn't like that. It's not always a tick for a yes or a cross for no. Ambiguity happens for us every single day. And so as leaders, we need to appreciate that ambiguity is a normal part, and we then have to try and develop ways for our cognitive reasoning to help us get through that and open up our minds to what's just possible and the opportunities that are laying there, not what just is obvious. If all we focus is on the obvious, then we're missing out all the other opportunities that lay outside of that. And so it's important for us as leaders, as managers, to realise that we're smarter than what we think we are. But by dint of that, we also aren't appreciating that we need to get smarter in other areas as well. So the same as we need to continually develop our bodies and stay fit and look at doing things, we need to continually develop our brains. Because if we don't exercise our brains, exactly the same thing happens. We end up with atrophy. The brain gets atrophy. So it's important that we focus on finding ways to exercise our brains every day. And it doesn't have to be purely focused on business. We can exercise our brains by having a lot of fun, and that will then support our learning and comprehension in business.
It's funny how you mention fun and accounting in the same line, you know. But is that possible?
It is possible, and that's one of the big things that we need to learn. Is that if you want to get better in business, you have to lead a better life. Just purely focusing on business, purely focusing on the numbers, reading nothing but business books, how will you ever broaden your horizons to be able to, you know, that catchphrase, you know, think outside the box? Well, if all you do is read and study and develop inside the box, it's insane to think you can then start thinking outside the box. We need to start having fun. We need to explore. We don't want to be childish, but we need to go back to being childlike. Remember when we were young and we used to find such marvellous things just by looking at the clouds, and we used to love exploring the sands and the beaches to see what we might dig up just a couple of inches underneath the surface. Having fun actually develops your brain, and the more you have fun, the better your brain gets. The better your brain gets, the more opportunities there are for you to think smarter.
So do you think that accountants get bogged down in so much numbers that they limit themselves and they just can't grow?
Exactly.
They don't develop?
I run a little exercise with accountants, and I put a series of numbers up for them in a straight line, and there's one number that's missing. And I say to them, I want you to find the number that's missing, and I want you to tell me why your answer is the right answer. And I even give them a hint. I tell them, and don't think like an accountant. And I give them about 2 minutes to go through and try and work out what the number is and the reason why. No one ever gets it, because even though I tell them, don't think like an accountant, they immediately start adding, subtracting, multiplying, using fractions, doing all those sorts of things. And then when I show them that the answer is because the numbers are in alphabetical order, if all you do is think numbers, then you'll treat every problem like a number. If all you've got in your toolbox is a hammer, you'll treat everything like a nail. We need to start getting out of what we do every day. We need to start exploring and having fun. And the more we explore and the more we have fun, the stronger our brains get to realise that there's much more out there than what we're doing in the office. And the other big problem is, just because you work long hours doesn't make you a better boss, a better manager, a better leader. It's not about the number of hours you work, it's how you apply your thinking during those hours that you've got. And so if you don't lead a better life, you'll never become a better leader.
So then how do you tie that up with leadership? Like you mentioned how important it is to think outside the box, right? And so how would that translate for accountants to being good leaders?
Well, if you want to be good in leadership, what you need to do is you need to be able to express a vision, clearly articulate it, and have the clarity to explain it to people such that they become enthusiastic and want to embrace the vision of the organisation. Well, if all you're doing is thinking like an accountant and speaking in those bland terms all the time, you can't tell me you're going to motivate and enthuse people. So to be a better leader, you need to acquire a lot more skills than just being excellent at the numbers. And accountants need to appreciate that. They need to start appreciating that it's much more than being technically competent. It's about being articulate. It's about being imaginative. It's about looking at the opportunities in propinquity. It's about being able to grab those unexpected successes and duplicating them. It's about learning from the unexpected losses and saying, right, let's learn from that. Instead of doing a post-mortem and getting all worried about it, having a failure, what can you learn from that in a positive way to move forward very quickly and recover, regroup, and try again? I mean, we tell this to children, don't we, when they fall off their bikes? Come on, get up, try again. And yet when we become adults and we're in business, we tend to forget all the things we tell our children. Something goes wrong in business, and so we sit and do a post-mortem and mope about why it went wrong. Don't mope about it. Get up, learn from that, and move on. If you keep making the same mistakes over and over again, then you've got a problem. You're not learning. But by making mistakes, if you learn from it, that's a very positive thing. If a leader tells me that they're not making mistakes, only 3 things can hold true. Number 1 is they're not doing anything exciting enough, or they're not being adventurous enough to make mistakes, which means what are they? They're mediocre. And mediocrity is a comfortable curse. You can live with it, but you'll never grow with it. Okay? Or they're failing, but they're just not smart enough to realise that they are failing. And the third thing then, if either of those two aren't true, then the third thing is they're telling an untruth. But if you're not failing, then you're just not putting yourself out there. You can't make splashy results by dipping your toe in the water. You've actually got to jump in, get wet, have some fun.
But Rick, is it possible for a profession that's largely got to just do with numbers, can they actually do that?
Of course they can. Of course they can. They're people. We're all people. We're individuals and we're social beings. We're social beings and we're emotional beings. What you've got to appreciate is they're educated to behave in that way because of the way they were taught in university and then the way they've come up through the ranks within their firm. They're only following the exemplars that have been teaching them along the way. We are not naturally boring people. We are not naturally introverted, thinking only of numbers. That's not who human beings are. Human beings started as social animals who'd sit around the fire in the cave and pass down the wisdom by telling stories and folklore. So of course accountants can do that because the way they're behaving now is learned. It's not who they are naturally. It's time for us to go back to being childlike and just start having more fun.
And all of that starts with the fitness of the brain.
All of that starts with the fitness of the brain and realising it doesn't just happen. You have to work at it. The same as you can't just turn around and say today, okay, I'm going to become Arnold Schwarzenegger. Just because you go to the gym for 5 minutes doesn't mean you've become Arnie, right? You have to do it every single day. Now, the other exciting news about all this is that many, many years ago, we were led to believe that once you reached adulthood, your brain had reached its maximum IQ level. We've now found in the last decade through research that our brains have plasticity and it can continue to grow and develop right up until the day we die. So the great thing about our brains is that no matter how old you are, you can start now to train it and make it smarter.
So you can never stop learning.
You can never stop learning. Here's another interesting fact that research has put on. You can never fill up your brain with words. So you can actually keep continually learning new words. You can never fill it up.
So accountants have no reason.
No excuse whatsoever.
Leadership isn't confined only to the boardroom or to the halls of parliament. It's in all facets of life, even sports too. And a legendary sportsman will agree that without a good leader heading a team, no amount of training or preparation will do any good. Petero Civoniceva is the name that often springs to mind when you think of rugby league. Since his career began in 1997, he has witnessed both highs and lows and has transitioned into a natural leader on and off the field. Tonight he shares his inspirational story of just what motivated him to become such a renowned rugby league player and how good leadership helped transform him and his team.
Sport has the ability to provide us with a common ground. No matter our backgrounds, a common goal to compete, to experience, to win, a great sense of achievement. We commit much of our time and energies to sport. We raise our champion sportsmen and women as role models, as leaders. These sporting heroes provide inspiration to all fans, young and old. They are the living examples of hard work, sacrifice, determination and teamwork, all culminating in success and glory. We are inspired and encouraged by them. We see them as leaders, pushing, encouraging their teammates towards victory. There are many parallels between the worlds of elite sporting performance and elite business performance. The need for excellence is paramount and is the driving force behind achievement. Competition is central to both, and success is often defined by the ability to surpass those they are competing against. To remain at the top requires constant innovation and imaginative approaches to work, as there is always fresh competition challenging for their position. For business leaders, these similarities are brought into sharp focus. As the driving force behind an organisation, they are responsible for spearheading success and must do so while bearing the weight of expectation on their shoulders. I was never the best player, but I was passionate about it. I had some attributes that would let me play at a good standard, but again, I was never a real standout. I was continually dealing with disappointment on missing out on representing teams, a hard thing to deal with when you love the game so much. It was those early setbacks that really galvanised my want for success. I continued the pursuit for improvement, sourcing advice from coaches, training by myself, doing whatever it took to finally get noticed. Sitting, waiting to hear my name read out for team selection, and then not being selected made me even more determined to prove to myself, to my teammates and coaches, that I certainly had more to offer. It was in my final year of school that I started to have some success in my young rugby league career. I'd physically developed to be a handy second rower, playing for school and club. I was finally successful in gaining selection into a representative team who would compete at the state championships. I played well enough to make the Queensland Schoolboys rugby league team. Finally, after all those hard knocks, persevering through disappointments, I'd finally been noticed. To be noticed was an understatement. Shortly after returning from the state championships, I received a phone call that would change my life forever. On the end of the phone was Cyril Connell, head recruitment scout for the Brisbane Broncos. This was not just any club. In the early 1990s, this was the Rolls-Royce of rugby league clubs. Australia's Manchester United, stacked with my heroes, true legends of the game, and just so happened to be my club. Cyril had organised to come to our house to discuss rugby league and my future. A week later, he arrived for the meeting. I'd never been so nervous in my life. We sat and listened and then nearly fell off our chairs when out of his briefcase he produced a playing contract, the moment I dreamt about throughout my childhood. My parents were quite emotional due to the fact that they knew that this is what I'd wanted for so long, witnessing my persistence and dedication to the game. In the summer of 1995, I started life as a Brisbane Bronco. In that first year, I played with the Broncos under-19 team. If you use the phrase climbing the ladder of success, well, I was well and truly on the bottom rung. It was at this time I would have my first contact with the head coach of the Brisbane Broncos, Wayne Bennett. He was dubbed the Super Coach. For many years, winning numerous grand finals with various premiership winning teams. He definitely had an aura about him. He will go on to have a major impact on my life. My first meeting with him wasn't the conversation that I was hoping for. I stood nervously whilst he critiqued my game. It was a dressing down of major proportions and how if I didn't improve, that I would lose my contract, cold and simple, straight to my face. The next 2 years, the conversation rang in my head as I fought to prove myself. It was as if I was back to my junior days, trying to prove my worth to all concerned. But it was these lessons learnt through the formative years that defined this period. I had to find a way to stand out from the crowd. I had to accept the reality that I simply wasn't fit enough, and I needed to make some sacrifices in order to fulfill my destiny. I trained on the team's scheduled days off. When my teammates were resting, I went to work. I ran every day, sometimes twice if I could fit it in. I joined my local police boys club and joined the boxing club. As a boxer, I made an okay footballer. I was there purely to take my fitness, both physically and mentally, to another level. It was extremely tough, and I went into games sore from the extra work. I noticed though, after a month or so, that I was competing for longer stints on the field. Mentally, I could fight the effects of fatigue. I didn't hit the wall anymore. I ran through it. It didn't take me long to be at my best every week. I finished the 1997 season taking out a number of awards, and the hard work had certainly paid off. I started the pre-season of 1998 with a point to prove. I now knew what it took to have success. My perception of what it is to be a leader on the sporting field, as detailed here today, was very much being moulded by my experience and also by my mentors, fellow players and coaches. Here are my 10 sporting leadership qualities that I've found to have a positive impact on me and my teammates. At the start of my presentation, I mentioned that there were many parallels between the worlds of elite sporting performance and elite business performance. I think these 10 points would translate well into your work team, office or business. Lead by example. The way you behave and what you stand for is very important. Give your team someone to follow. Be prepared to step out of your comfort zone. You'll be amazed at the untapped potential within us all. Only if you're prepared to push past the boundaries you put before yourself. 3. Only worry about the things that you can control, not the ones you can't. We get ourselves sidetracked on the uncontrollables and external pressures. Focus on what you and you can do only. 4. Understand that everyone needs recognition and encouragement to keep going. There's nothing worse than a stagnant environment. Recognition of effort and encouragement can inspire your team to push harder and further before. 5. Focus on the process, not the end result. You can't focus on the end result if you're not prepared to take all the little steps between where you are now and where you want to get. 6. Respect the different qualities of your teammates. A great team is about harnessing and combining different skills and qualities of different people. 7. Empower your team. Be prepared to share your ideas with others. Delegate tasks accordingly. 8. Ensure clear communication. The best leaders are the best communicators. It's a two-way process. Clear, precise communication breaks down any deficiencies within the team environment. 9. Build a strong team culture. There's nothing more powerful than a team that is working off the same page, same direction, all in the pursuit of a common goal. 10. Build discipline and accountability in the team. Set the expectations and parameters of which the team needs to work in. Every team member is accountable. Ensure that the ownership is taken on in this regard.
And finally on the show tonight, we take a closer look at the role of the CPA Fiji branch and its achievements over the years. The organization is an affiliate of CPA Australia, which is one of the world's largest accounting bodies with a membership of more than 150,000 finance, accounting and business professionals in 121 countries around the globe. CPA Fiji has been tasked with grooming accountants and enabling them to become better leaders within the private and public accounting sectors.
In Fiji alone, our membership base has more than doubled over the past 6 years. CPA's emphasis on leadership, strategy and business, the key themes for this year's Congress, is reflected in the quality of the CPA design as well as in the membership demographics. Collectively, about 17% of our members hold senior leadership roles across the globe, including more than 21,000 members at CEO or CFO level or in business ownership roles. We recognize that there is a growing need for professionals and business leaders to take the lead, to take charge and to demonstrate their expertise as leaders in their country, in their respective businesses and also in the communities. Our program, as you can determine from the program booklet and also from the video that you have just seen, will showcase examples of leadership that we can not only marvel on, but where we can reflect on and more importantly, draw from. As leaders, we must have learned that we must have an honest understanding of who we are, what we know, and what we can possibly do. Leading has and continues to be about grasping the trade-offs between today's needs and tomorrow's priorities. Leading with speed is what is required in this highly globalized environment, and a CPA, I should say, is very well placed to handle this, noting and appreciating that different people require different styles of leadership.
And that's the show for this week. We'd love to hear from you, so do send us an email, talkbusiness@fijitv.com.mj. Remember, you can catch me on the net on our YouTube channel as well as our Facebook page. And if you're on Twitter, follow me at Rachna Fiji TV. Thank you for joining us. To join us again at the same time next week. Until then, have a productive week.